Well, good day everybody. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Typewriter video series. Today's video is going to be about the Casiowriter CW-10 thermal typewriter. This is one of these of the three that were gifted to me by Gregory Short. Again, thank you Gregory very much for those typewriters, and we're going to cover this Casiowriter today. Stay tuned. Well, the Casiowriter was a thermal typewriter that I had been unfamiliar with until Gregory sent it to me in that great care package. And the first thing that struck me, of course, was the fact that it comes in this hard plastic carrying case, which reminded me of the Canon Typestars, which do have a hard plastic carrying case also. It's a little bit thinner, I think, than the Canon Typestar type case. So it has the two sliding latches there and there. It has the original owner's manual, and it has some legacy non-thermal typing paper back up here, as well as there was a test typing that somebody had done at some previous time, maybe when this machine was in a thrift store or something, who knows. But it says, "Hello everybody, I need to kick myself in the head like a fish stick." Like a fish stick? Anyway, that's pretty funny. Then the rest of this was blank, and I had actually test typed on it when I first got it. So anyway, there is the owner's manual, operator's manual for the Casiowriter. There was a legacy film ribbon. It was one of these ribbons for typing onto normal kinds of non-thermal paper, and there is a second ribbon that came with it also. These ribbon cartridges for typing onto non-thermal paper are not being made anymore, and so what I've chosen to do with my thermal typewriters is I do not use those ribbons. I keep them as legacy ribbons. They're just part of the collection of ephemera that comes with the typewriter, but I basically use these strictly as thermal paper typewriters. Okay. Also, in the back here in the carrying case, there's sufficient room for the full-size AC adapter and room for the cord even to lay there. And actually there is enough spare room, I found, that you can store the D-cell batteries in the case as well as the charger, which is pretty nice. Well, let's pull this typewriter out here. Well, the Casiowriter is kind of a medium-sized thermal typewriter. It's not quite as small as the Brother EP43 or EP20, but not as big as the Sharp or the Canon Typestars. So kind of an intermediate size. So first of all, there are no platen knobs. If you might recall, the Brother EP43 has one knob, and I think the Canon Typestar have two. What it has instead is this roller wheel right here that you press and turn either way, and that will manually feed the paper. You also have a paper release lever that you can use just to release the pressure rollers underneath, and you can feed the paper manually through the platen roller. It has, of course, an AC adapter jack for powering it off of an AC adapter, but it's also powered by 4 D-cell batteries, and I actually currently have 4 rechargeable NiCad D-cells in here. It won't recharge NiCads internally, however. On the underneath side of the machine, let's look at that. Of course, you have your battery compartment right here, and you have a carrying handle that flips out like that, so you can just carry the machine like that. Of course, if you choose to do that, you'll notice the keyboard is not protected, right? But you can carry it like that. One of the nice features of the Casiowriter, there are a set of feet that deploy like that, and there's actually 3 different heights that you can set this to, and so when you set them down, you can elevate the back of the typewriter up a little bit, and it helps you see the LCD screen a little bit easier, and it gives you a little bit more ergonomic typing position. And of course, to retract the legs, the feet back down into the case, you pull them toward the front of the typewriter and then push them in, and then they lock like that. So on the right side of the machine, you have the rocker switch for the power on-off, and you have this control wheel, which is for adjusting the density of the printing. You can go from a lighter to a darker type of density in the printing. Okay, let's look at the keyboard here. Starting in the upper left corner, we have a print mode key. Let's turn on the power to this. The print mode will select between direct print mode, manual return mode, automatic return mode, and justified mode. In the direct print mode and the manual return mode, it won't do a carriage return until you hit the carriage return button. But on the other two print modes, it will do an automatic carriage return provided you have typed either a space or a hyphen in the hot zone near the right margin. The line spacing button does exactly what it used to think it would. It selects between 1, 1.5, and 2 line spacing. And the nice thing about these controls is you can see the effect of the setting immediately in the display. There's an underline button, so you can just press this and you go to underline mode, and you press it again and it goes out of underline mode. There is a style key, and you can select between standard imprint, double strike imprint, or stretched letters where they stretch out horizontally. Then there's a left and right margin key, and you basically want to drive the print head to the right or to the left using either the space bar or the backspace key in conjunction with the margin release key, and you can set your left and right margins. So this 10 and 12 indication that is above the line spacing button right here, it's molded into the plastic. This is accessed through pressing the shift key, and then you can hit the button and you'll select between 10 or 12 characters per inch. And when you do change the size of the characters, it will reset the margin, as you heard, because the margin is based on so many characters from the left edge, and the spacing of the characters is now changed when you change between 10 and 12. So if you want your margins to line up on the left side, even though you've changed from 10 to 12, you'll have to make an adjustment to the margin setting to get those to line up. The right side of the keyboard, you have a tab set key enabling you can use the space bar and the backspace to move the print position and then set your tabs. There's a tab clear, there's a tab all clear, and now there is also a centering key. If you hit the centering, the CTR comes on the display. You can type something. When you hit a carriage return, it'll print out centered on the paper, which is really handy for doing, for instance, titles of your typecast blog articles or whatever, right? There's also a right margin flush feature. If you press this key a second time, right margin flush will right justify the font, which is pretty cool. You press it a third time and it clears both of those modes. These two arrow keys are for when you are in the process of typing. This machine will remember the entire line of text that you're typing, and you can move your print cursor back in the display, back and forward, to do inserts and deletions of your font for doing corrections. So for instance, if you, right here, if I hit backspace and then I can type a different letter, then to get back to the end of the line where I continue typing, there's a relocate key right next to the space bar. Hit the relocate key, it'll jump back to the right side of your typing, and you can continue typing. So editing the print line in memory is very easy. The display has 15 characters in the display, but it remembers the entire line, as I said. This slider control is just a contrast control for the LCD screen. You can adjust it as you wish. I usually leave it down at the lowest setting here. Works for me. On the keyboard, of course, you have a nice return key, and the shift key is in a really nice place. This is one of the nicer keyboards as far as the location of the shift key, because some of these keyboards on these thermal typewriters, I think it's the EP43, they have a big return key and a small right shift key, and it's easy to hit the return by mistake. But this one really is nice. In fact, both the left and the right shift keys are on the same line here, right on the left and right side of this lower line, very nicely located, in a nice return key. So good keyboard layout. Backspace key is in the upper right corner here. Now there is a alternative keyboard, and those alternative keys are accessed via the code key and or the shift key. So for instance, the number 3 key, if you just type it like that, it's a 3. If you shift type it, it's the hashtag or pound symbol, of course. If you do code and 3, it types the beta symbol. And if you do shift code, it types this superscript 3. So that is how you access all the different combinations of the alternate keyboard symbols. So the layout of the keyboard is really quite simple. It's not as complicated as a lot of other thermal typewriters. On the left side, your margin release key is up in the upper left. Your tab key is just below it, and your shift and shift lock. I wanted to make this point, though. You may not be familiar with this, but on all of the thermal typewriters that I've owned or tried, when you go to shift lock, of course your little red light lights up, but to get out of the shift lock mode, you don't hit shift lock again. You have to hit the shift key below it. And that takes some getting used to. If you're used to a computer keyboard, this will confuse you, because hitting it a second time does not release the shift lock. You have to hit the shifting. And I realized just recently that they're probably trying to mimic the way a manual typewriter works. A manual typewriter, when you hit the shift lock, it locks down the shift key and you have to hit the shift to release it. Well, they're kind of simulating that here. Now, this is one of the things I really love about this machine. It has a really nice feeling keyboard. In fact, I would say of all the thermal typewriters I've owned or tried, this Casio has the best feeling keyboard of all. And secondarily, to go along with a great keyboard in feel, it has the best LCD display I've ever seen. This has, it's just a 15-character display, but it's the largest sized characters that I've seen on a thermal typewriter. Makes it very nice. Just that alone, those two features alone, and when you deploy the rear feet that helps you elevate the back of the screen a little bit up higher, this makes for a very nice writing or typing experience. However, there are a couple caveats to that, and one of the main caveats to this fact that it has a great keyboard and great display is that the sound it makes when you do a carriage return. So when you are typing a line and you do a carriage return, it makes a click, and it makes this little multi-pass jog back to the home switch on the left side, back and forth several times. Let's try that again. It is really annoying. The sound this makes is probably the loudest of any of my thermal typewriters, and that's one of the few things I don't really like about this machine that you'll have to get used to if you want to enjoy this great keyboard and great display. Well, let's feed a roll of paper into the machine here. Release the pressure rollers. And this machine feeds even the really thin Staples fax paper rolls really easily through there. And then, of course, you release it. You can push down this thumb wheel and you can manually move the paper up and down. One of the few things I don't like about this machine is that it doesn't have a line feed electronically on the keyboard. Some of the other machines allow you to feed the line up or down in half-line increments, so you can actually return to a previous line and retype it. This machine, it's a push and a continuous geared roll effect, and so you can't accurately get back to your same line. That's one of the things I don't like about it. Now, here's something I do not like about this typewriter, and it is this edge up here of this plastic cover that has your scale for your printing scale. This rear edge is nice and sharp, and in theory you could use it for tearing off your paper, but they have these plastic ribs that are along here, and they have little nibs sticking out, and it keeps you from tearing the paper off. If you try to tear the paper, it will just kind of, let me show you here. It just kind of tears off really poorly because of these nibs right here. In the case of myself using this machine, what I do when I tear the paper off is I when I'm done writing, I will release the pressure roller, I'll pull the paper out of the machine, and I will tear the paper off using the strip that I have fashioned into my little carrying box of roll paper here. Okay, so let's look at the density of the printing. And this is another thing that I have a gripe with. It's not a real dot matrix look like the Brother EP20, so it's a little more sophisticated typeface, but it's not that dense. And in fact, you can see sometimes the bottom of the characters look a little bit faint. And there's something else. Look at this letter O. Do you see how that's kind of misshapen or not fully printed? Well, that's a problem in the machine, and I know what's causing it, but I haven't fixed it yet. I'll show you here in a little bit. But the problem with this machine really comes down to the noise it makes when you're typing and the fact that the printing is not that dark. There is a density wheel adjustment here, and I have it set to the densest setting, the darkest density, but it really doesn't get darker than that. If you want to have a compromise between usability and the quality of the printing, I find it helps to use the 12 character per inch mode, and this is the double strike mode that I'm in right now. So the double strike mode in the 12 character per inch mode, and that's about as dark as it gets. It's not super dark. So in comparison, this is the EP43. This is the Casiowriter in the 10 character per inch mode. Here's the Casiowriter in the 12 character per inch mode. It's just not quite as dark as it should be. Okay, but I want to show you something else. This is the AC adapter power cord. I want to plug the AC adapter in. Let me turn the machine off. Plug the AC adapter in. Turn the machine back on. Now I'm going to type that same line. Okay, let's take a look at the density of it. Okay, so the top line was printed using battery powered, and the bottom line was printed using the AC adapter. And you might notice, like, if you look at the word now, it looks like it's printed a little bit nicer on the AC adapter than on the battery power. And I think there's a little better consistency on AC power than there is on the batteries, which is interesting. There is a little defect that's in this machine, and let me unthread the paper, and maybe I can show you guys. Okay, behind the print head along this black metal paper table, there is a rubber strip right here. It runs the full length of the carriage. And right here, along the left margin, there's a series of indentations, like dimples or dents in that rubber strip, and that's what's causing that second letter on the left margin to imprint poorly. Is this rubber strip is kind of worn out. There's a lot of just wear on it. And so one of the options would be for me to find a strip of rubber that's really thin like this and try to peel off this old one and try to glue on a new one. The other option is to try to fit some thin piece of material, like a thin piece of plastic film or something, over this to try to smooth it out. So basically, when you're printing, the paper is squeezed between this rubber strip and the print head. You might notice the way this machine works is the print head is currently pressing up against that rubber strip, so if there was a piece of paper in there, the paper would be pressed between the print head and the rubber strip behind it. And when you do the carriage return to do the printing, it immediately prints, and then this whole bar down here that the print head rides on articulates backwards to permit the print head to release itself from the paper while it's doing the carriage return. See that? So there's a separate motor and gear system that pivots this print head bar back and forward. But basically the left edge of this rubber strip is badly worn, and that's what's causing some of the irregular printing. The rest of the rubber strip feels okay, so I can't really account for the light or faint printing, other than maybe that's just the way this machine is with this particular kind of paper. Okay, so what I have been able to do, however, is I put a strip of adhesive tape along the left side of that rubber strip, covering the rubber strip. And it seems like it has made the printing quality on the left side a little bit better, and it doesn't seem to offer any detractions from the way that the print head works. So that looks like it's a little temporary fix, at least, to get the printing on the left side a little bit better quality. Okay, the top line is 10 characters per inch, battery power only. The next line is 10 characters per inch, AC adapter. And then the next two lines are 12 characters per inch, battery power only, and AC adapter. So it looks like the beginning part of the line prints a little bit better than it did before. There is this little problem here, and that could be caused by the end of the tape mark, the thickness difference when the tape runs out. So I might have to put tape the entire length of that strip in order to get the printing to be more consistent. Now, another improvement that I might want to make to this machine is take it apart and see if I can't put some dampening material underneath this bar so that when it does the shifting it's not so loud. So for instance, those two snappy noises when it raises and lowers, if I could put some dampening foam or something underneath there, maybe it would quieten it up a little bit. Now I should also mention that this little problem, the noise it makes when it does a carriage return, the little jog at the end of the line, see how it does a double jog? When I first turned this on today, it was doing a triple movement, not a double movement. So it is possible that this particular phenomenon is just unique to this one machine. It may not be representative of all the Casiowriter CW-10. So maybe that's just a problem I have in my machine, but I don't have another machine to compare its behavior against. So as far as the features go on this thermal typewriter compared to some of the others in my collection, it only has one typeface or font. It doesn't have the dual fonts of the Canon TypeStar and the Sharp. It does have, I would say, also a very easy to use editing feature. It remembers the entire line of text, and you can scroll back and forward and edit that line of text if you're in one of the indirect printing modes. And using these cursor arrows to be able to move back and forward on that line of text, it makes it really simple, easy to use. The other thing I like about it, of course, is the great keyboard and the largest LCD display that I have on any of my thermal typewriters. That makes it really nice. The downsides of this, number one, the loud noise it makes when it does the carriage return. Secondly is the faint, relatively light print quality. Print quality is a little bit better on the AC adapter. And then the other thing, of course, I don't like is the way this edge of the cover here doesn't really permit you to cleanly tear your pieces off, tear your sheets off when you're using roll paper like I like to use. So those are some of the downsides, but as far as this being a usable typewriter, probably one of the best machines for typing on in terms of comfort. I would rate the typing experience right up there with the EP43, but overall I don't think this is overall as good of a machine as the brother EP43, only because of the sound it makes and the print quality being lighter. Those are the two things that detracts from it. Keyboard and LCD are the best in class. The sound it makes and the printing quality are worse in class. So this is kind of a mixed message, a mixed review. I would love to be able to say this is the best thermal typewriter in my collection, and it would be if it wasn't for those two issues. That being said, though, it is still very usable, enjoyable to use, and it's definitely a keeper in my collection. So if you guys are interested in thermal typewriters and getting one, certainly the Casiowriter is a good thermal typewriter to consider, especially if it's being sold with the plastic hard case. It's just a real practical way to carry it around and to protect it when it's in storage in your closet or whatever. Well, this is Joe Van Cleve and another thermal typewriter review. I'm going to be soon doing a complete shootout, a big comparison between all the different thermal typewriters in my collection. Drop a comment down below if you're curious about thermal typewriters, and I'd love to hear your comments. And as always, stay creative and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.